guys, it's Mike again at BavhausTV, and today we're going to show you how to replace lower control arms on an e39 M5. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do while we're up front is our lower control arms. We have our lower control arm, and then our traction strut is what they call it. So they are both OE equipment, they're just directly from Lemfurter. So you can see it's edged out. You're just gonna look for, the two that match. So R and R, we know these are our right, and then those two would be our left. These have the Turner Motorsport solid monoball control arm bushing. You can buy that separately and press it in yourself, but these were actually delivered to me already done. We're gonna start on the passenger side and then go to the driver's side. So let's get to it. So we are underneath the car on the passenger side now. What I'm gonna show you is kind of a general overview of the things we're gonna have to remove. So right here, you have your headlight level sensor where it actually connects to this control arm, which we're gonna be removing. You have this sway bar end link nut that's going to be removed. There's this sway bar end link mount to the chassis where the bushing is. That's going to have to be removed as this bolt is in the way right here, or it's in the way of the bolt right here. So these two, this, obviously this, and then these two. And the problem with these two is they're blocked by the strut. So before we do anything, we're gonna remove the sway bar end link on this side so it can stay with the strut. We're gonna release the nut off of the back of the spindle here. We're gonna mark this so that it goes exactly back the way it came off. They are labeled left and right, but the height and everything seems to be important from what the ISTA images are talking about. I don't know if it's just about the labeling, if they're fully removed, like to make sure you put the right back on the right, the left back on the left, but in this situation, I'm not sure, so I'm just gonna mark it and put it back how I took it apart. And then once we can drop this spindle, we're gonna hold it up. I'm probably gonna bring my transmission stand underneath and just hold it. We're gonna go after those two nuts because at that point, there's gonna be nothing else holding this on but the steering, and I don't want the drag link just holding up that entire spindle with the brakes and everything on it. We're probably still gonna do them one at a time regardless. So I think I'm gonna start with the traction strut in the rear, as it seems to be more difficult once we get to that point. So I'm gonna go grab a marker before anything. I'm gonna make a little cross right here, so I'm gonna know it came at this spot where it's actually like going through, and then I'm gonna go right in that seam and mark it there too, so you know that's exactly where it's sat. So I'm gonna do that on both sides, so it's gonna be already done when we show the driver, but that's just to give me time to let that side dry. I'm gonna mark like that, and then like that. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, so we're gonna take a 16mm wrench, hold the back of this sway bar end link, put a 16mm up front, and remove our end link just like that. We have a washer that sits on the back side. We're just gonna put the nut back on and move this out of our way. We're actually gonna go back up to the top. I'm gonna turn this that way, and then we're gonna remove the strut from the top. So we're gonna go for that pinch bolt. I have a 16mm on the bolt head, and then back here I have an 18, I think? Yeah, 18 with a swivel, 1/2 inch, little extension, and then my impact gun. And we're gonna just try not to shear my face off. Okay. Comes out with the bracket for the sensors. We're just gonna bring that out so the bracket just sits up against it and the pinch bolt goes through. Oh, I also have the transmission stand underneath it, as we're gonna try to see if this thing is just gonna walk out on its own. Usually just a little rocking motion forward and back will get these out. But if not, you need to put something in between, like a chisel, and see if going straight will help it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now I'm gonna move this here so I can catch it by a hub. So we're about 1 inch lower now. It's really going slow, but it's kind of how I want it to go. I'm gonna take a little bit of WD-40 and just lubricate a little seam where this gets put inside. Just to make my life a little easier. Let's see how it works now. All right, so it's still giving me a little bit of resistance, so I'm just gonna chisel something in quick. All right, so you can see we went down a little bit. So I'm just gonna take this chisel and get to a place where it's separating just a little bit. That, move it around, wedge it in a little deeper. There's a tool for this. It's pretty much just that. Just hammer it in, so I normally just use the chisel. Okay, one down a bunch there. And we should actually be able to reach at least that one already. Now I have to decide if I want to take it fully out or just halfway. So I think at this point, we're gonna do maybe the front one first, because I don't think it wants to go down anymore without maybe disconnecting the steering link, which might be something we should just do regardless. So actually, yeah, let's do that over here. I'm bringing you guys back onto this side. We're gonna just remove that outer tie rod just because I think it's pulling up against our strut. 18mm for the steering end link. it stopped, so we're gonna have to put a hex head in there and actually pull that. So we're gonna take the ratcheting wrench like that. Then I have an H5 that's gonna go in the top of that ball joint. Make sure it's really in there good. And we're just gonna use the caliper as a way to hold that while we disconnect the nut. Okay. So that's our tie rod, which looks like it's seen better days. Maybe not. So that should have taken some resistance off for us. So now, with that out of the way, give us a couple more wiggles. Yeah, maybe definitely go down on this. We'll push that a little more. Okay, so I think right about there, I actually can get to these pretty decently. So we're gonna leave it like that. What I'm gonna do first is probably the rear one, just because it is more difficult. So let's get started on that one. So the next thing we're gonna do is remove these two 13mm nuts. It might be on there pretty hard. This is just to remove this sway bar bracket so we can get access to the lower control arm bushing bolt, pinch bolt that goes through the subframe. Okay, pull the steering rack out of the way a little bit, and that should be able to come straight out of there. Now what we're gonna do is actually take a wrench, hold this side of it, and then we're gonna have to move this around probably to really get it out the right way. So screwing around with the steering, but that's the bolt we're going after. Next thing you need to do is actually make room for that bolt to come out. What I do is I take a 21mm socket with a short extension, and you kind of want to turn it until this is straight on. So I have Justin turning the wheel from the driver's side right now. He's gonna pull it right until this idler arm gets right up, lined up with that bolt from if you're looking straight at it. And at that moment, you're gonna have room between here to get to that bolt. So Justin, just turn it. You can see no room. I'm getting room, keep going. And right about there, stop. You're pretty lined up. Go back just a little bit. Yeah, right there. See, so I can get on and I can get off. Now what we're gonna do is just break it free. And then you can move this guy around a little bit too. Turn it a little bit. I wanna see if anything happens with the sway bar. All right, so it's not that one, you're good. You can go back. No, actually keep going in the direction you're going. Yeah, we'll go like there. Okay, I'm gonna get a slightly longer extension if possible, and a big bar. I'll actually leave that extension. So I don't think a deep socket 21mm would work here. If I had just a slightly longer extension, that would be better. Because I'm just barely in that 21mm. That might not be enough. Here, I'm gonna just get a longer one. All right, hopefully this one's not too long. I think we're good with that. So now, I'm gonna get a bar, start breaking it quick. There we go. And at this point, you should just be able to hold it. So I'm just gonna put this here, and we're gonna ratchet it off the other side with a 21mm ratcheting wrench. It's a little hard to get on there because of the angle of the bracket that's holding it. Reaching the end. Got the nut off. There's the bolt. Again, go move it just a little bit so I got room. A little bit more towards you. Like there. A little bit more towards you. Yep, stop. Okay, again, more towards you. A little bit back off, just a tiny bit. Let me get a pry bar quick. If you can finesse this well enough, you don't need to actually remove the bolt entirely. Okay, a little bit more towards you. Let's see if it's through here yet. Almost. Let me see if I can get a couple taps with a hammer. I kind of got it out. So now we're just gonna remove the bolt entirely. You can grab our control arm, pull it out. So what we're gonna do now is go after this nut here, 22mm wrench, and it's gonna be pushing away from us. So you're gonna wanna hold the spindle and just get it broken free. I'm just gonna get this tie rod out of the way. Just leave it up here or something. It's probably gonna follow me a million times. Put it over there or something, whatever. So we're just gonna turn that so we can get to the point where the nylock starts locking again. I really gotta get this out of the way. So I keep my finger on top to just tell if it's spinning on the ball joint itself yet. In this case, it's not. But when it does, just take a 6mm hex, put it in the top, and that's how you'll be getting that nut off the rest of the way. Oh, actually, I think we were in good enough that we didn't need to, which is cool. It also might be a pain to get this guy out. So, you have that, you have your washer. Put those aside for now. And now we need to find a quick way to get this guy out. We're obviously not going to be reusing this or the nut. So if I can find something to just give it a good hard hit, I can get it out that way, because I don't think I have the ball joint remover. The other thing I can do is use a pickle fork, but this is aluminum, and I don't want to mess up this boot just in case the owner wants to reuse it. I'm going to give parts back to him. So let's try to just get something like a pipe or something, or a chisel right onto here. And I'm going to take a heavy hammer and hopefully just give it one good whale. All right, so I have a chisel on it. It's going to take my hammer and the shock going through there. Doesn't look like I can shock it enough like that, so I'm gonna take some PV blaster and get that right up in there quick. Right up in that groove. And then worst case, if we have to use the pickle fork, we will, but I'd rather not. Okay. It's an old trick, and it doesn't damage anything as long as you keep the nut above the thread, so it also doesn't get stuck. You don't have the correct ball joint tool. That is the best way, in my opinion, to get it out without hurting anything. Pickle forks work, but they, you know, would mar all this up, mar even this up. And this is still usable. If you run into a pinch or a bind and you really need something, it's not completely destroyed. There's no sense in just completely destroying it just because you can. So we're gonna go get this out. We'll compare it to our new one, show you the differences, show you some of the fatigues and stuff going on with this part, and then we're gonna put it back in. This is our old arm here, and we're just gonna compare. They're the same, they are. One thing I noticed while I was in there, that this is the Lemfurter part, but you can see it's already etched out. So this was already replaced by somebody at some point. Somebody actually ground down this control arm bushing. So I think that this control arm bushing was already a replacement once. Then the control arm bushing blew again. Somebody else pressed another bushing in, which is also Lemfurter. It's marked with yellow paint, so just like I did. So somebody marked this already and removed it. It is showing some fatigue already. You can see some rips there, and it's the whole inside is almost twisted right here. It's got a little rip there. The ball joint itself is still working to some capacity. And you can see this is what I was doing with that chisel. I was hitting just the top right here. So this is a throwaway bolt anyways, or nut. And you just do it above that and you don't damage anything. So one thing to note, these mono balls are significantly shorter. So that creates an issue when you go to mount it. Turner solution, these little spacers. So this might be annoying to put in. They're gonna sit inwards like that, where bevel then goes towards the mount itself. So yeah, these have dates on them. So this one says 19, 20, 21. So I'm assuming that's the 19th week or something of 21, because this one just says 07. I think that's the date. Regardless, we're gonna get it in first. I think I'm going to reinstall it to, so yeah, we're gonna do it in the reverse order of how we removed it. So I'm gonna do the ball joint first, at least get it in and held, and then we're gonna try to get that bolt back in, somehow line up these spacers and get the nut on the back. All right, so we're gonna come through here like this. Don't forget your washer. Put that big washer on, and then our nut. We're going to take the bushing, kind of make sure that ball joint's loose, because you're going to need to screw at the angle. We're going to put this guy back up into here. Just turn this in just a little bit like that. Now here's going to come the part when we get our bolt in. So again, these face inwards. I'm going to do the first one first. I need to find that mono ball. And now I'm fighting this up here again. That was gonna take a few taps with the hammer. Right by where the mono ball is. Something like that. Now we need to push this entire assembly back in the opposite direction. So just gently going like that. Fix our angle here as well, which will probably be done when that steering comes in just a little bit more. Get that other spacer in there, which currently there's not much room for. Needs a little bit more room. Like that. You get a couple taps and get it generally where it needs to be. Now let's see if we can line everything up. I might try to line it up from the back with a small screwdriver or something. Let's see if we can get this in more. Okay, it's actually going in good. It's gonna get to a point where things aren't quite perfectly lined up. I'm gonna go grab something just to wiggle around that backside. So this is what the mono ball setup looks like from where I am. I'm just gonna take a screwdriver, try to line things up in here. It seems like we're just a little off. This needs to be like here. We're looking pretty good right there. So now I'm just gonna tap that bolt, check where I'm at. It's coming in nice. Give a couple little more taps on that bolt. She went through, that was freaking painless. So now we're just gonna tighten this up, hand tight, because we do have the room here to actually put the car down and torque this under load. We will actually torque this under load. So I'm gonna preload the suspension on some blocks or something. We're gonna come underneath here and actually tighten this up. So all you wanna do while you're here like this is just get it hand tight. So in this sense, I'm gonna have Justin go back over there, turn the wheel so I can get it to the point I need it. So we're probably just gonna you guys rolling right there for a second. Right there. And perfect. And then now we're just gonna start tightening. If you remove these plastics, you probably have more room. Make this a lot easier for you. On that side, just a little bit of patience, and this works without it. All right, so right there we're tight. Again, this is actually has a monoball in it, so it's not as important to torque it under load because it's gonna be able to kind of freely spin regardless, but the procedure does call for it. So I'm gonna just show you guys the regular bushing needs to be torqued under load because if you install it here, pinch it, and then you put the car down, then you're actually stressing that bushing in its normal riding position, which is gonna cause premature failure. You can even get like body roll, all sorts of weird suspension problems with. So that's one thing that I've noticed a lot of people miss is torquing under load properly. You don't want the bushing to be stressed when it's just doing its normal job. It should only be stressed when it's working up or down to create resistance to actually pull you back. So if I created the regular position of torquing this to whatever the spec is, probably like 110 Newton meters, 90 degrees, something like that. In this position, put it down, you can almost instantly rip those bushings. That's pretty much it for that one. I am gonna go and tighten the part that goes to the spindle on the ball joint. Again, the ball joint doesn't need to be torqued in any kind of position because it is free spinning. That one where it connects to the spindle can be torqued to spec, and we are gonna check that one out right now. We're gonna rearrange the camera just so you can see directly what we're looking at. Before you do, Justin, just grab it and show them what that monoball looks like. I'll put it in place. All right, so now we're gonna put this guy back on. Gonna get it into the position where it's gonna tighten. Like that. Counter hold it. Again. Get this thing going mostly like this. It's a little tedious just with all the stuff in the way, but a little patience and get through it. Okay, right there it's starting to tighten up on me. Get to the nylon. Okay, I think right about there. Stop spinning. Yep. Okay, so now we're just gonna have to try to get a torque wrench on this guy. Get it to 80 Newton meters. So maybe we can get this from down here. If not, I'll have to figure something out. Okay. That's 79, literally on the dot. So I can get it to stop somewhere. There we go. Whew. A little difficult, but just use it pushing against itself to get it done. So the next thing we're gonna do is probably get this guy back on and in place. Give it a little opening on it. Can I borrow that light? Yeah, so the opening goes towards the back and then the bracket goes back over as well. Just gonna take this, put this up here. It's pretty straightforward. And then we're just gonna take our 213s. You should be able to get a wrench up in here to hold it when we go to torque it later. And if not, you might have to take this back off, but I'm gonna put it all back together for now, just so it is done. Okay, you can quickly check if I can like this, maybe from here. Yeah, so you can hold it. That's all we're gonna need to do. Honestly, at this point, if you take a 21 onto this side and spin it, get enough on it, you'll tighten it up to the point that the bolt doesn't even spin. So like right there, that bolt doesn't spin, so when I go to torque it, it's already tight. So yeah, you won't have to mess around with this. So that's gonna be the harder one to torque under load. The front one's the easy one. Right after we do this, we're gonna move right onto that front control arm. I'm gonna keep the tie rod out just for now, just because it is assisting us a little bit. All right. So let's go direct our attention to that front control arm now. The first thing we're gonna wanna do is remove this headlight level sensor. So underneath, you're just gonna grab this tab here and the other little lip, separate it. It should come right off. And then This is kind of how it's held on. It's hooked up there, and then it's got a little place where it sits perfectly right there. So just like that, and see, holds it. So again, you're just taking a pair of pliers and then pushing against the two spots. And it should just come right out. Okay, like that. Next, we're going to remove this bolt here. Should be two 18 millimeters. So take an 18 millimeter wrench, put it on the back. It's actually a 16 on the other side, but I just have a 16 on an impact. See the entire suspension is lowering. So I'm gonna go actually prop it back up on my tranny stand. So when you lower this arm, that's when you want the tranny stand. Now that we got that out, take the bolt, the nut, and then you can pull this guy straight out and down. You can see it's a little limpy, not in the best shape. Now we're gonna go after this bolt up here, which should also be a 22 and 6 millimeter on the inside with a 1/4 inch. So we're gonna put this back to the counter holding. Make sure that the thread up here is nice and clean, it'll take it. That, there are 22, and we're gonna be loosening, so go in that way. So we can get this on nicely. All right, and now we're gonna have to break it free. So probably again, we're gonna push it onto something. So here it kind of maxes out on that other control arm. That's what we're gonna break it free. Okay. So again, seems like no need for that counter hold, but just in case you did need it. I'm gonna push this forward just a bit, so that's out of the way of that. Let's see, this one's gonna come out easily. Get our washer. Looks like it's gonna fight us a little bit. Doesn't look that bad. We'll put the nut back on. Couple threads. Not too little that you can bend threads, but not too much where you're actually hitting the ball joint. I'm gonna do some penetrating oil in there. Got my chisel and my hammer. Find a good spot to wheel on. Toss it the other way. Just distribute the force in a different direction. Make sure that we never actually get out. I'm just wheeling on it for no reason. Find a better way to hit it and get more force on it. Might go for the pickle fork. I don't want to really go under there. I don't have to though. If you can get just a direct blow with the hammer, that's probably my best bet. Oh yeah, she's really in there. You can go with a pickle fork or a torch. I'm not sure what I want to do first. All right, so I think I don't want to get a pickle fork into it because if I take the pickle fork and put it under here, there is this little seal there. I can see the PV blasters coming through, so it's a little bit more time and should be all right. Like that. So now the only thing is I did do a lot of damage to that nut to protect this ball joint that I have to really try to get this ball joint out now because if it ends up real bad, then I'll have to cut it. Hopefully I didn't do it that bad. Oh no, not bad at all. So again, a little bit more work and obviously more force, but you can see all that rust. That one's been in there for a while and you know, still usable, no damage, no marring. You know, I didn't take the pickle fork and beat up this bushing, I didn't beat up this, so definitely the better way to do it. All right, so grab your new control arm, break that ball joint free so you can move, position it in right, like that. You're gonna take your washer, put that on, get your new nylock nut. We're going to tighten this back up the same way we did the other one, like this. Just gonna go until it gets tight, like right there. Okay, now we're gonna torque it to the spec. All right, so now we need to get this torqued up to our 80 Newton meters. Just see if I can get this just under there. Barely doesn't fit. I wonder if I'll be able to still get the torque on it. Don't do what I'm doing, but I'm doing what I'm doing. All right, there we go, 80 Newton meters. So that's all set. We're gonna take our new nut for the inside and get this guy lined back up where it's supposed to be. A couple taps with the hammer might help you out. tightening it, you know, like that. And then take our bolt, 16 millimeter, goes on the back side. Just gonna straighten it out. Pair of pliers. Leave the bolt halfway in, straighten out this side. Like that. Looks like it needs to go out a little bit. Something like there. Cool. And again, we're gonna hold with that 16 millimeter, or the 18 millimeter, and we're gonna put it in with the 16 on the back. Decently tight on this. We're not gonna go too tight. Actually, make sure that the thread is nice. It's caught up real quick. I don't know what that was about. Okay, so even there, get it tight, and then I'm gonna back it off like one turn. Next, we're going to reattach our headlight level sensor bracket. This part just goes in and hooks like that. I'm gonna go around here, over that beveled part, like this. Hugs it, and then gonna pull it through. And you might need to use some pliers. Pretty tight fit. It's like spring loaded by a piece of metal on the back. Sometimes it can be a real pain to get this thing back in. There we go. And you'll hear it clip into place once it finally goes, and that thing is not going anywhere. So after that, what we're gonna do is actually jack this back up. We're gonna get our strut back into place, which we can actually probably just do from under here, to be honest. Through all that twisting and turning, our strut was completely moved a lot. So we're gonna put it right back to where it was. You can see it's got some like preload. It wants to spin. Definitely make sure it goes back the way you took it apart. We're gonna do that by watching it. So I'm gonna preload it again, like that. Start jacking by the rotor. This is why it helps to have the transmission stand. You can do this on jack stands or on a floor jack if you really wanted to, but again, I just want to make sure it's exactly where I took it out. I think I'm already a little too far to the right, so I'm gonna lower it a little bit. But I just need to make sure it's where it was. I might even have you go under there, Justin, and just tell me if that lines up nice. All right, so that's exactly back where it should be. Justin's just gonna verify that while I lift, that it stays there. So I'm just gonna lift slow. We got a little bit more to do. So what might assist with that, you do a couple things. You can jack a little bit more, but right around there, I don't want to start jacking the car up. So now it's under a ton of spring tension. All we're gonna do is just take the chisel, put it in between that spot where we were chiseling before, give it a couple hits, free it up, and it'll bounce right back into space. So right now, if you look, our lines are perfectly matched up again. We were perfectly good to put that bolt back in. And here's just a quick verification that all of our paint marks do match up. There, and dead center. So next we're going to put the pinch bolt back in. So it goes bolted from the front. And take the bolt, put it back to the bracket. Make sure the bracket's lined up properly. Put it through. Get your nut back in place. And then we're going to hold the nut with an 18. And I got a 16 on the impact still from before. We're gonna go and torque that to 81 Newton meters. Before I do that, I am just gonna quickly put my tie rod back in place. We can just lower this out of the way. So, give me some clearance for this tie rod. Washer. And our nut. Okay, cool. So, I'm gonna lower this completely. Turn this way. Okay. And we're going to torque that 18 millimeter nut to 81 Newton meters. Just gonna take the torque wrench, already set to 81 Newton meters. Just make sure that bolt on the other side doesn't turn. Okay, 81 Newton meters there. Next we're going to go back and torque our sway bar bushing. We just got it on by hand, so we just want to make sure the spec's right there. And then also our outer tie rod. We're just gonna tighten our outer tie rod back up. You should be replacing this nut, we just didn't have it on hand. You're using the old one. I'm just marking it. Let me get it nice and tight first. Alright, that. And then we're going to torque it to 65 Newton meters. Just a little less. Okay, right there, 65. Oh, actually pulled off the 64. So, there we go. All right, so now lastly, let's just go make sure that our torque spec is around where it needs to be, or exactly where it needs to be for our sway bar, end link, and bushing. All right, so now we're gonna put the link back. Just like that. Tighten this back up. Or the washer stays on the inside. This is 16 millimeter. I'm gonna quickly get it on and also torque this to 65, which should be set to right now, not 65 newton meters. So right there. All right, and then the boot kind of walked off, so we just need to push it back over. It's missing actually a little clip that's supposed to be there holding this forward. It would be smart to replace these. All right, next we're gonna do these, which I believe just go to 21 newton meters, which feels right. Okay, and what I'm gonna do, since I'm not entirely sure about that, is I'm just gonna grab my wrench one more time and just feel if it, yeah, that's it. So it was marked as stabilizer bar. I don't really view that as a bar. It's more of a bracket, but that's the only thing that really made sense. So that's it for this side. We have everything torqued up. What we're gonna do now is actually move over to the driver's side and do the exact same thing. All right, so we're gonna start by doing our end link. Let's free that up. And get to the point where we can get this on. Yeah, these end links are smoked. So weirdly enough, on the other side, the washer was on the inside, and on this side, the washer's on the outside. I don't know why. I'm gonna have to actually quickly go check a schematic. Somebody moved something in the past. I would think the washer would go on the side with the nut, but the nut has a built-in washer anyways, so I can see why it was put on the other side. So give me 1 second, I'm gonna go verify this. All right, so that washer, we just looked at the diagram, it's not even supposed to be on here, so I'm just gonna take this out and just put the nut back on. This is how they usually are anyways, so we're gonna have to go back to that other end link and take that washer off. We'll do it off camera. It's just, you know, senseless, but yeah, this can just go away. So if you have that, you don't need it. So we already have it marked here with our paint marker, so that's gonna be our center line going down, and then obviously where we are lined up. Just looking at the other side compared to this side, it does look like that alignment does matter, pretty evenly installed. What we're gonna do now is take this nut off here on our outer tie rod. So let's do that from the top. All right, so for some reason, this tie rod on this side is a 19 millimeter nut. The other side was an 18, so it's a little weird. Gonna make sure this thing can go as far as we can get it. All right, break it free. Just gonna get it out. Get our nut and our washer off. And then this one should be pretty easy to come out, but of course, looks like this one's gonna be a little difficult with me. I'll probably have to get this one down flush, and then hopefully I can just get one good whack on it and it comes out, because I do have to reuse this nut. Give it some of this. See if we can take some taps first. And also do this. This is just to shock the inside of it, which I think is already working. You don't want to do this too hard, but just try to get a couple good shocks. Okay, so maybe with one good square hit, we'll get lucky. Let's see if I move it in a little bit. All right, so I did just get one good hit on it, and I can tell where it's seized. So it's actually stuck on the sleeve that's coming out. So if I just tap out like this now, that's why it was holding up in there so hard. So this needs to actually be removed from this tie rod and put back in, or what we can do is just leave it there for now, and maybe when we go to reinstall it, we'll just reinstall it with it there. It's actually probably the smarter bet just to leave it alone, and we're just gonna put it back in, pull it through, torque it to spec. But before we do that, this happens somewhat often. I've had it happen a couple times on e39s. Just gonna get this back in, get that nut off. So did it without damaging anything, which is good. I mean, obviously I mushroomed that a little bit, but not too bad. Maybe I'll have one of those kicking around. So yeah, this is that sleeve I'm talking about. So this is actually seized to this sleeve. And actually this ball joint is toast on the inside too. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, right up in there, it's all screwed up. So this wasn't even sitting correctly. You can see all that grease road grime and stuff. I was sure to let him know right now that that's an issue. And you can see right there where there's some kind of like corrosion weld. There's something wrong with the inside of there. All right, so moving on from that, we're just gonna put this aside and then let the owner know that that's an issue. And then we're gonna move on now to the pinch bolt on the strut. So what I'm gonna do first is bring that transition stand back over, and we're just gonna hold this up with it. And then we're gonna need a 16mm and an 18mm to remove this pinch bolt. So I'm gonna remove the pinch bolt now. The 16 in the back is counter holding with the 18 on the nut. Get that guy out. Again, these should be replaced. Pinch bolt out. Start giving that a wobble. So you can see it's moving already. What I'm gonna do is just get some PP Blaster, get it around that rim so it slides down easier when we need it to. Okay, and then now I'm gonna go take a chisel, start chiseling it back. So we're just opening this up a little bit, which again, not too hard. We're just trying to get this wedged in there. We're not trying to really screw with anything. If it's wedged in, you know you're better off than you were when you started. Get this out of the way, give it a little push. It's only gonna go down so far before we remove that other arm. So it's this arm that you need to support underneath it with, but the other arm is all right to remove it without. And that's fine, because going down fine. And then what else you can do, then you just push on the bottom of it, get to the point like this where I'm a little bit more out of it. Just go right up on that bolt, and it will kind of bottom out where there's no more room to go. So I think that leaves us with enough room right here to start with this nut, and then we have to screw around and get this bolt out. So let's start with removing this bushing again, or the back bracket for the bushing, so we can get to the bolt for this rear tension strut. All right. 13mm. Another one up here. So on this side, we actually have the pitman arm sitting way out on the outside. So I think just by moving this sway bar a little bit out of the way, we're definitely gonna gain a lot of room to get that bolt out. It's not gonna be as difficult as the other side. At least that's the idea. Just gonna take the bracket off this time so it doesn't fall on me. Of course, this one wants to hang out. Okay, there we go. So our 22mm here. What was the other side? 21, right? So, or maybe they were both 21 actually. So let me grab those. So I have Justin over there. He's gonna go move this so that we can utilize this gap. So just go turn it, Justin. And I think right around there we're nearly perfectly on. Okay, we are perfectly on. All right, actually, can you go over just a little bit more with that? There, perfect. All right, so that's where it fits best. And then now, only issue I'm running into is I need a shorter extension. So that's perfect. So use about a 1-inch extension. You can use your shallow socket, 21mm, and then 1/2 inch, and I'm perfectly on there right now. So last thing I need is my cheater bar. I'm gonna put it on the end of this ratchet and start turning it. That's loosening now. So now I'm gonna put the 21mm wrench on the other side. Now this bolt has not seen the outside of this car in a long time. See if I can get it off. Nope, not yet. It's really seized on there. Okay. And somehow I ended up off the bolt. Okay, there we go. Gotta always check what you're doing. I didn't even realize that was off. Yeah, it's real tight. Starting to ease up a little bit. There we go. Okay, that's our nut. We get our extension out. Nut's out. Okay, Justin, go that way a little bit. Stop. A little bit more. Stop. More. Okay, so right there is where we're gonna have to knock it. Just like that. Maybe one more little hit. I'm just using the back of the cheater bar, not even like a hammer. There we go. And she's out. Now we have our arm right here. which you just need to slide out of place. This one's got a little bit more resistance than the other one, but I think the bushing might not be the greatest. Oh yeah, I think this bushing's completely blown out. All right. So I think what I'm gonna opt to do here is actually go and give it a couple hits from the top and kind of get it out that way. That, okay. Now we're gonna focus our attention to the back of the spindle where we actually have the nut to remove it, 22mm. Yeah, if we get lucky like last time, we can actually get this off without having to use that little 6mm hex on the inside. Okay. And I think we did get lucky. Almost there. Couple more turns. Okay, so we're gonna take our nut, our big washer, put them somewhere you'll remember about them. Don't forget about that washer. And again, I'm gonna put that nut back on, just the nut. A few turns, like that. Right before it hits the nylon probably. And then I'm gonna spray a tiny bit of that penetrating oil. Gonna get a chisel. And I'm gonna turn this a little bit this way so we can kind of get more straight at it. This one's being a little pain as well. I just don't want it to come out of my strut completely. So what I'm gonna do is here's something to actually strike against. So in this case, I'm just gonna put this transmission jack underneath so that when I strike it, it's not pushing up against that shock. Something like that. And now we should be able to get some good hits on it. So as long as you have like something to push against, that force actually works in your favor. Then we take this guy right out, and there we go. So just looking at this bushing, there's a tear there, and then there's a tear here that actually goes all the way through. And if you look at like the numbers or something as reference, even this right here, you can see that it's almost twisted this way. So usually when it's like this, where I can like move it this much and it's ripped really that bad. Oh yeah, look at that rip. So this was the feeling that the owner was definitely feeling while driving this car. That bushing's definitely bad. But the torsion on this and the premature failure, because again, you can see that this is a recently replaced part. It's probably due to the improper torquing under load when this was installed. Let's show you what that looks like over here. You know, massive rip right there. This side's not even attached here. That's what I was seeing underneath the car. And then up there, I could probably break that right now. You know, this was almost separated here completely, almost separated here, or is separated here completely, almost separated there completely. In which case, it would definitely cause crazy vibrations and all sorts of noise, and you know, you couldn't even drive the car. The vibration he was feeling was from that, and you can tell that that was improperly torqued because our ball joint, you know, it has a ton of resistance, but the bushing doesn't look bad. You can still see the color on the little clamps that hold the bushing on, and it moves without any crunchiness or anything. So, and also you have again that indicator there that this is already a replacement part. So it was done at some point. I just don't think it was done correctly. So let's get the other one in. So here's our new Lemfurter arm with our Turner monoballs for our control arm bushing. Put that in, bend it a little bit so our ball joint starts moving. Then we have the angle we want. I'm gonna start tightening this. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is actually push this back out so we can get it a little lower. I'm gonna go over here, try to get it down so we can fit that 1/4 inch ratchet back in. Okay, I think something right around there. And then this one is an H6. If you're taking the tie rods off like we are, make sure you're switching the H6 and an H5, because if you mess that up, you're gonna regret it. Strip that H5 or H6. It's very difficult to get these out without cutting them off. A 22, still is a 22. I don't know why I'm so dead set on doing a 21. Just gonna bring it in like this. This might take a little bit, but so just because the area here, I think I'm gonna move this whole thing this way and do it over there. Right now I'm just locking that 1/4 inch H6 up against the caliper bracket. I'll just go until it gets a little bit more resistance. Alright, like that. Okay, perfect. And then that gets torqued to, I think, 88 we said before. Still have my 22. But it actually goes to 80. So it was 81 or something, but I'll double check in a second. But let's at least get to the 80. Okay. All right, 80 Newton meters. We're gonna take the monoball now, get it all up in here. So I'm gonna go just double check that that was 80 Newton meters. We're gonna get the spec again for this because I had already forgot, and get it all torqued up. So this is gonna go at 80 Newton meters, so we did have it right over there. Now I'm gonna put this back up here, like that. And again, we have these spacers that are gonna be like the smaller bevel that it goes in on. I'm gonna first get the bolt back in, because I think that's probably the best thing to start with. So right when I see the bolt, I'm gonna take one of those spacers, get it up into place. So I'll put the spacer in, then get the bolt, monoball. You might have to wiggle this a little bit. I'll get that lined up a little better. Give this a couple taps here. Oh, maybe. Let's try that. So the angle is just slightly off. Where it would need to be like, let's see if that will do it. Like that. I know I just gotta get past this point. Just can you actually go move that just a little bit that way? Yeah, right there. Perfect. Stay just like that. Okay, so now we're in the monoball at least. Need to get back behind it and put that other spacer in when we get a little bit closer down. Just gonna keep tapping it. Right there, I was holding it in the back to gain some resistance. Other spacer's gonna go in. Again, bevel side facing inward. Chisel kind of push it away. Seems like a lot of a tolerance on this side for some reason than we had on the other. I'm just gonna try to open this up just a little bit. You can see that monoball working right there. Give it a little pull like that. And there we go. That was perfect. All right, so I guess it was just a little too crimped in before. Put this guy in. Get the bolt the rest of the way through. Like that. Couple taps. Okay, get our nut. Put that back on the back. All right, now we're gonna get our 21 millimeter back over here. So just on as you go, readjust that. So pushing it this way so we can put it in there. Like there, and I'll bring it back a little bit. Right there, stop. I'm gonna try to put the 21 millimeter on first. A little bit to your side. Right there, perfect. So right there is where we're gonna leave it. We're gonna get it tightened up like this. 21 millimeter in the back. Okay, so it's tight. We're gonna torque the rest under load. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna put this bracket back up quick. And grab our two 13 millimeters, put them back in place. Oh yeah, you can tell that somebody was screwing around with this at one point. There's actually marring on the inside of this hot rod bushing, so someone was chiseling at it. That's why it came out with it. Okay, and we're gonna torque it back to the spec. And I think we got that set for, what, 21? It felt right. We're gonna go put that pressure on. So I got to 23. I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna back it off for any reason. Let's see what that feels like. Perfect. All right. So that's all we're gonna do with the tension strap for now. That's gonna be torqued under load where it actually mounts to the subframe. Next, we're gonna go and remove this lower control arm. There's no headlight level sensor on this side, so way easier. We're just gonna take it off both sides. I'm gonna start by taking it off underneath from the subframe. But I'm gonna put the transmission support back underneath it so that it doesn't fall on my head. Okay, so I'm just gonna put my 18 on this side. Get around here. 16 millimeter for the bolt. Holding on to something. Come on. There we go. All right. So that's that. Now we gotta remove it from over here. And for the first time, I think I remember it's a 22. Okay, so I'm gonna hold it like this. Just make sure if you ever push on the dust shield, you always push them back right away. Okay. The washer off, put the nut back on. Let's see if we can get away with just giving this one a couple whacks. No, we're gonna have to go from the top. Okay, so I'm gonna use the PB blaster quick. Just line that up. Switch it to this way. This one's gonna fight. Go back this way. All right, let me see if I can give a couple dead blow hits right to it. Really mushrooming now, and you can see this one we're actually gonna have to drive out because it's coming out with the inner sleeve. Get this thing off. Oh, luckily I didn't actually overdo it. So in this sense is the one where we are gonna actually have to get this sleeve out of here. So it's gonna go inside this ball joint, hammer that out. I think the only real issue with using the penetrating oil is that sometimes I've noticed prefers to release this press-in fitting rather than release the ball joint. Especially if you use ball joint pullers, I've seen these completely just fly right out. And then now we have to remove this front here. So let's go do that. All right, so this is the sleeve in question. You can see all these old rusty marring marks, especially these two right here. It looks like it was a couple hard chisel hits at one point, and it's actually dented in. So that's actually why this came out with this. It's because it's not perfectly straight. So this can't just slip in and out. This is like pinched onto the ball joint. So you can see another mar there. There's one there, there's one there. And then here's a real bad one. So somebody probably, when they were replacing this last time, ran into this same issue, except they just went about it the wrong way. And now if you look in there, you can't really see it, but it's now kind of beveled, and this isn't perfectly straight. Right up top here, it's dented in. So I have to figure out a way to get this off without damaging it. And these aren't just parts that are really supposed to be coming out. I don't think this is really replaceable. I'm gonna try to just put it up against something and maybe get a couple hammer hits on the inside here and get it out the rest of the way, but I'm not sure how that's gonna go. So I'm probably gonna let some PB blaster soak in the center of this first for a little bit and then take it from there. All right, so the more I look at this, I'm starting to see more hits from a previous install kind of gone wrong. So I think we're gonna try to get this guy off. So we might have to destroy one of these old arms. I'm not even sure if the owner really wanted these. Normally we just scrap them, but I was kind of collecting everything from this car just because it is an M. Some people like to keep stuff like this from their M's. In this case, I think the best way to salvage the part we need is to destroy the part that we don't. So I'm gonna use the pickle fork and hopefully apply some pressure and get that guy off nicely. Yeah, see right there, that's why we don't use pickle forks if you don't need to, because they are destructive. Let's see what that just did. Did that go through the bushing? Yeah, it did. All right, so pull it back. I don't want to go through the bushing because it's just creating unnecessary resistance. So if I can kind of keep the angle nice on this, should be able to avoid that bushing. See, so we got over the bushing. So I'm gonna go down to the ground maybe. Pretty much tapped out over here. And maybe now I can maybe fit a chisel or something underneath. I think I just need a slightly skinnier chisel. Okay, so that's just coming out now. I think the best bet would actually be cut this and then go to the press and actually press the two parts separately. Let me think about it just for one more second before I go that far, but I think that might be the route. Unless I can get this over that. It looks like it's just gonna be slightly too long. So maybe I could just cut the end off of this, put this on this, and then actually pull it off. That might be what we do. It's gonna be a lot easier to cut this. I'm gonna give it one chance to fit. No, so I'm gonna have to cut the threads off. So I'm gonna do that. So we got it cut, I got the puller on, and now I just got a 3/8. I'm gonna hold it down somehow. I'm gonna go on the ground like this, hold that like that. Let's see what you can get out of this. Got it. So if you ever need this out, That's how you do it. And if you can see in there, there's damage and it is not completely straight. So right here is where the worst of it is. So we did have to sacrifice this, but again, it was not gonna probably be reused. So this is what we did, just a little puller and then pulled this off like that. Real simple. So you guys probably won't be able to see it, but there's actually like a hammering lip here too. So I had to clean it up a little bit, again, from somebody reinstalling this already once before. So I lubricated it, and with this, you definitely want to get it centered, and that little lip is gonna create a little bit of an issue for me to center it up. So I'm just gonna lightly drive this back in. We're not gonna do any heavy hits. I'm gonna let it walk back in whatever way it wants. Hammering in a circle. Already like so much hammering and stuff on this. Just let it choose what it's gonna do. Be patient with it. Right there, it's starting to get a little caught up. Maybe now I'm gonna increase my hammer hits because it is centered. Okay, so right now I'm getting a ton of resistance. I have two options. I can keep hammering it, or I can pull it through with the nut. And honestly, let me get a few more hits and see if it does anything else. Get back up on there. Hold that there like that, Justin. Push down on it too, so that you're countering me. And that's good. All right, we're back in business. All right, so back to your regular scheduled control arm programming. All right, so I'm gonna clean this up a little bit, just because I think we have a little power steering box leak, which is pretty normal for these things. Not really a leak, but a sweat. This guy back up in there. Just, can you go jack that up? Just make sure it stays pushed up against the rotor. I'm gonna put that washer back and the nut. All right, so we got a little bit of spring tension on there. I'm just gonna try to open this up a little bit. It's not going up the way I'd like it to. Okay, I think like that might be a little better. Obviously, that might be the best bet, because we can grab this thing, falls all the way down, and guide it up like that. Yeah, like that. Perfect. Sweet. And now just get this lined up. So actually, before we do that, we need to get that 22 millimeter torqued up. So I'm gonna need that distance that we just had. I probably should have done that first. We'll let this tighten back up, create some resistance for us. Gonna get this guy tightened up. Let's see if I can get that 6 millimeter. Gonna need to come off a little bit. Maybe I'll get lucky. Let's see. Not lucky. Okay. So now, can you hold the rotor? We're gonna put it down just a little bit. I'm gonna get this thing torqued up. Just pick it up. I'm holding it from the back. Okay. Like that, right? Right there. Okay. And then jack it up a little bit, just so we have some. Okay, perfect. All right, now let's get the 1/2-inch torque wrench, 80 Newton meters. Just counter hold it for me so it doesn't fall off the training stand. Okay, I just was bending that heat shield a little bit, so we're just gonna pull that back off the rotor. Perfect. Okay, now we're gonna bring this back up, so just jack it up. Okay, a little bit more. All right, so is it stopping there, starting to pull up? Yeah. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna hold it at this height, release this. So I'm gonna have you turn this, and then put the whole thing underneath. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Get that back under there. Cool. Now we're gonna grab our nut and our bolt. So now we're gonna get this control arm back in where it needs to be, which is like right around there. I'm gonna use a punch to line it up. Bolt goes in the back. Okay. Oh, I got it all the way through. Man. 18 in the front, 16 in the back. And again, we're just gonna get this kind of tight because these have to get torqued under load. Okay, like that. Next thing we're gonna do, so instead of doing the end link, let's go do our pinch bolt up top first. I think that's gonna be the better way to go about this. So we just verified that the yellow line is in between the crack. You guys might not be able to see it just because the angle from what Justin's telling me from being behind the camera. That's what you're gonna verify. This crack that you're marking when it was down here is now in that area and it's finding its way through. And right there, we already got to where we need to be. So I'm gonna go underneath quick, verify that my other 2 lines are lined up, and they are. Boom, boom. So actually it looks like before, the strut might have not been fully down, because there is a little bit more length before it actually hits that spot, which is interesting. I'm happy with that. That's exactly where we took it out. I'm gonna grab my pinch bolt and the nut for it, and put that back through. Pinch bolt goes through the bracket, then that goes through the steering knuckle, and then the nut goes on the back. 16 in the front, and an 18 in the back. And then this one's gonna get torqued, I believe, to 81 Newton meters. So I'm gonna release the transmission jack and put that away. We won't need it anymore. I'm gonna turn it this way, and then hopefully find a spot where I can get a torque of 81 Newton meters. Little turns, but making some progress. Got 3 lights on. All right there we're good. Next I'm going to grab my tie rod over here to get this guy back in. Definitely being careful as to how this one goes back in, because we did lose this one with the sleeve as well. This has definitely got to go back in dead straight. Also don't want to hammer too much in the ball joint, but giving these like awkward random taps is helping. And again, you can see all that marring from this being put back in or taken out in the passing properly. And I think with this one, I'm gonna pull it through if it gets, like, if it binds up the way the other one did. This has to be replaced anyways. Yeah, I'm gonna pull it through the rest of the way with the nut. And switch it back to a 5mm hex. Yeah, so this whole side must have just had somebody working on it at some point that didn't really know the car too well or something like that. Luckily when I mushroomed it out, not in, so we can get away with using this. And it did pull up, beautiful, okay? And I'm going to torque this one 65 Newton meters with a 19. Move this in my direction so I can connect to the steering again. Grab 19mm and get it to 65 Newton meters. Right there. Now we're gonna move on and do the sway bar end link, and then we just have to go back and correct that other side where there's that additional washer that's not necessary. So we're back with our end link over here. Just gonna put this back in. Get this guy tightened up. I think they were using that washer as a spacer to create more room, maybe, to put this wrench on, but even that wouldn't make sense because it was still bigger than the little 16mm cutout that you use to counter hold. Okay. So, just like that. This one, the bushing didn't back off like it did on the other side. We didn't actually get the bushing back on the other side. We just used some picks and pulled it back forward. This also goes to 65 Newton meters. Okay, and now we're just gonna go pull that washer out the other side. All right, it's back on passenger. Okay, so pull this out, throw this away. Put this back in. 5 Newton meters again. And we're done.